We can start by tracing the Amish religion's origins by looking at its roots to the 16th century Anabaptist movement, which emerged in 1525 in Zurich, Switzerland, where dissenters first rejected infant baptism, emphasizing adult baptism as a sign of genuine commitment to Christianity. A significant turning point in this movement occurred during the Rees-Amman controversy in 1693 to 1694, leading to the formation of distinct Amish and Mennonite groups. Jacob Amman and others advocated for practices such as shunning, separation from the worldly, and specific codes of conduct, settling the Amish on a unique religious path. The migration of the Amish to North America commenced in 1737 with their first significant settlements in Pennsylvania. Over the centuries, the Amish community slowly expanded, maintaining a distinct way of life. The 1972 Supreme Court decision in Wisconsin v. Yoder solidified their commitment by allowing the withdrawal of children from formal education after the 8th grade. Today, the Amish community comprises over 250,000 individuals across the United States and Canada. Their shared adherence to the Ordong, a set of unwritten behavioral regulations, underscores their commitment to preserving a unique cultural identity rooted in century-old traditions.
Talking about the scripture, the religious teachings and beliefs, and the religious values of the Amish religion. The Amish are part of the Christian faith, so their scripture is the Bible. The Bible is the sacred text of the Amish people. The Amish interpret the Bible literally and directly in many cases, which explains certain aspects of their lifestyle. In older Amish services, the Amish usually read from the German translation of Martin Luther. A quote that I got from the scripture that they really use is from Romans 12:2, and it states, "Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God." This scripture, that is often used by this religion, is a reminder that they are admonished to live a life that is separate from the world. Moving on to religious teachings and beliefs, some of the Amish religious beliefs include baptism by choice, pacifism, not conforming to the ways of this world, and the values of community, fellowship, and family above all else in life. One of the main beliefs that the Amish have is that God has a personal and abiding interest in their lives. Faith-based Amish traditions include wearing plain clothing, living in a simple manner, and helping a neighbor in need. Religious values like respecting family, loving one another, working hard, and honoring the Bible, are beliefs and practices carried out by the Amish. But sometimes you may still have some questions regarding why they live without modern amenities, why they dress differently, and what their religion has to do with it all. By following the 4 principal values of faith, family, community, and living in a simple and modest life, the Amish live out their own religious beliefs and lead a unique life in their own spiritual way.
We did our interview with Dr. Kimberly Schmidt, who is a professor of history and theology at Eastern Mennonite University. She received her PhD in American history from Binghamton University, and she's a published author on the subjects of Amish and Mennonite women in history. She was born and raised as a Mennonite, which is a religion that's closely affiliated with Amish, as they share many of the same practices, but express their outward beliefs differently, meaning they're often less strict and have less rules and regulation. She's also very familiar as many Amish transfer into Mennonite as they're leaving the Amish community, so she was born and raised and has grown up around the Amish community.
There have been a number of TV shows and things like that showing young Amish people leaving and partying all the time and kind of losing their self-control, and that actually doesn't happen that much. Amish children are taught a lot of self-control, and they're taught to be fairly skeptical of modern life and modern technology, and to not just readily embrace, the latest fashion or anything that kind of comes down the pike. So they have a fairly strong sense of critique of modern life, and they are unlikely, in most cases, they are unlikely to just embrace it wholeheartedly. Over 90% of children who are raised Amish actually join the Amish church as adults. Okay, so every Amish community, every Amish church, I should say, church and community are practically interchangeable. They are run by a bishop, and the bishop is always male, right? There's never a female bishop, and the bishop and the deacons or the elders of that community will come up with what's known as an Ordnung. Ordnung. It's a German word. It just means order. So if you hear someone say alles in Ordnung, it means everything's in order. So the Ordnung can really vary from church group to church group, depending on how conservative or how traditional the bishop is. So in general, though, you can pretty much depend on the super traditional, what we would call old order Amish. They're not going to have electricity. They're not going to have cars. I mean, it's just kind of all the stereotypical things that you can think of. Although sometimes they will have gas-powered appliances inside the house. They just won't have electrical-powered appliances inside the house. It can really vary from community. But in general, they want people to work in the house or on the farm or within a business that is family run. You have a lot of Amish carpentry shops, for example. You have a lot of, especially out in the Midwest. I don't know if you've heard of this company called Jayco. It's like a huge mobile home company. There are a lot of Amish families where the men all work for Jayco. So my family, if you go back 3 generations, they were Bohemian Amish, and they came to the United States. And I always thought that they came to the United States and then they joined the Mennonites because there were no Amish there. But that's not the case. There are a lot of Mennonite families my family way back when left the Amish church when they were still in Europe. And it probably has to do with the fact that Amish can be the shunning that Amish do, the very strict enforcement of rules can be very damaging, I think, to family life, to a person's psyche. They are very marriage oriented. So if you are a single woman, you will always be called an Altmädchen, an old maid. And you will never have the status in your community that a wife and a mother will have. And in fact, you're called an Altmädchen even if you're married and you can't have children. Becoming a parent is the highest status that you can get in that social hierarchy. So if you're married and you have fertility issues or something like that, and you're not parents, your husband will never be an elder or a bishop, and you as a female will never have the same status as maybe your sister or cousin who are married with kids. There are a lot of restrictions that feel very 19th, even 18th century in their permutations. I think it can be very damaging for people who are gay. If you're LGBTQ, I don't know what LGBTQ kids can do in those communities except for leave. I mean, it is a real problem. Those who leave, I think it's really compelling. Education only goes to the 8th grade. That's a major problem. There are really great things about the community, but there are also things that are very restrictive. and I think can be very damaging to individuals and to their broader families as well. Yeah. Yeah. So one thing to remember about the Amish community is that the household really is the center of the community. I mean, that's where church takes place every 2 weeks, and houses are built to accommodate large family groups for these services every 2 weeks. So the household really is the center of the community, and women are the center of that household. I mean, she has a voice in that community. I think unlike some other traditional groups, women might not be able to vote in church decisions, but they often influence votes and decision making behind the scenes. There is still a fairly rigid patriarchy, but one thing to remember about especially the old order is that Amish are taught, both men and women, they're taught as boys and girls from the day they are born to conform. That expectation of conformity really, I would never say that it levels the playing field, but men are also expected to conform. So there's this odd dynamic with these traditional groups that you don't find in other traditional groups where it's all on the woman. So men are also like, if women get their wrists slapped or whatever for some kind of infraction, the men will as well. So there is this kind of odd dynamic, which is only for I would say the old order groups, the very traditional groups. Once those groups start to move out of the old order and more toward becoming what we call worldly, more like the quote unquote, the English, the rest of us, that's where you get a lot of restrictions and kind of clenching on women's roles. Like, women have to stay in the home. We don't want married women working outside the home. And there's like this anxiety about the worldliness, like where these people are going. Are they getting too worldly? And it will focus on women's roles in the community. Well, Amish were invited, Mennonites and Amish were invited to be, they were known for their agrarian expertise. And so both in Europe and in the United States, they've been invited to take over lands that a lot of them which had just been recently dispossessed, like from Native American lands. I mean, Amish and Mennonites have benefited from, being white, being, European agrarians, good farmers. And so they have had, I think, a pretty good deal when it came to, coming to the United States. They've been able to get land, keep land, expand. They've expanded their communities. The Amish are one of the fastest growing religious groups in the United States, mostly because they have so many kids.
And now for more about Amish culture and faith. Amish communities tend to be geographically excluded from other communities outside of the faith. They do not do so because they dislike other people, but because they believe that salvation comes from the redeeming power of living a loving life in a pure community of believers who live in separation from the world. The community is at the heart of their lives. The Amish faith and the way in which they live are inseparable. Individualism is avoided in the Amish faith, as the importance of community is heavily emphasized. Even with living separated from other communities, they still have many contacts with the outside world, and some have even started to venture out into the other communities and to other places. Amish always live in rural communities and work in harmony with nature to please God. They tend to avoid technology, including cars and phones. The Amish do not think of technology as evil, yet try to avoid the ones they believe will damage the community. Some Amish communities have modernized and use more technology. Next, we have life within Amish families. Amish typically only marry other Amish and don't divorce. They have large families averaging 7 to 8 children. Children are educated in their own schools until they are 14 years old, when they can then stop schooling and learn practical life skills to contribute to the community. According to BBC, After 16, Amish children can experience life outside the community for a few years to decide whether they wish to become full baptized members of the community. 90% decide to do so. This leaving of teens is more formally known as Rumspringa. This is a time of growth for teens of faith where they go on and discover life outside of the faith. As mentioned, most return to become full members of the church. There are traditional gender roles in the Amish faith, as women are to submit to their husbands and take care of their children. The men are in charge of spiritual life of the family and are responsible for providing sustenance. Amish communities work together to support one another. According to BBC, members of the community help each other, and the whole community will work together to help a member in trouble. They do not accept state benefits or use insurance, but rely on community support instead. You may also be wondering what the Amish could do with their days after they're done working, since they don't have phones. But some of their leisurely activities include quilting, canning, fishing, board games, and sports if they are not done in a competitive way. The Amish do not support the idea of competition and pride, but rather community and teamwork, so team sports such as softball, volleyball, and basketball are often.
As has been shown throughout our project, Amish everyday life does not fit in with our modern society. The use of technology, our style, and general way of life is completely different than Amish communities. As stated in our interview, many Amish do not want to leave their society. They choose to stay. After they've had their period of Rumspringa, which is a rite of passage for young adolescents before they become baptized and which rules are less strict, they can then choose to leave the community without being shunned, as they have not yet been baptized. After they become baptized, if they were to break away from the community, they would be excommunicated and shunned. Multiple sources, including the Washington Post and ABC News, have both stated that around 85 to 90% of adolescents choose to join the church after Rumspringa. Although to us in modern society, it may seem outdated or almost weird, but it's important to respect their way of life and culture. Even though Amish rules have continued to be strict, some communities have still found ways to integrate into modern society, mainly through areas of industry, including contracting, construction, and the creation of different goods and services. They will often outsource to an assistant or company that will set up contracts and drive them to and from sites. For example, in Erie, Pennsylvania, Andrus Labor Company converted into Amish sheds for less when the owner decided to hire Amish construction crews. He says on his site that, "I quickly realized that finding qualified carpenters in the Erie area was harder and harder to find dependable and trustworthy. During this time, I turned to the Amish community, where I was repeatedly impressed with not only their work, but the knowledge that goes into it. They come to work every day clean and dressed. There is no bad language and don't have to worry about drinking the night before because they don't drink. As far as the quality of their work, it is beyond impressive. Their sons start working by an early age, so by the time they are 20, they are well versed in the trade. That would be equivalent to an English boy going to trade school for 10 years before going out on his own." As for Amish women, many will take up quilting and baking to sell around the local community in order to help provide for their families. Even though their lifestyle seems impossible, they have not only found ways to adapt, but thrive in their own communities, which continue to grow and spread throughout the United States.
3, 2, 1. Now that we've gathered and reviewed our research, I have a new understanding and respect for the Amish community. I learned that this religion is strongly dedicated to their beliefs and traditions, and find it truly impressive how they have shown their resilience against societal changes repeatedly over time. This religion is one that was created out of choosing to follow what they believe and leaving behind what they don't. Their values rooted in community are truly admirable, along with their devotion to them. Despite their unorthodox ways of living, I believe that we can all learn something valuable for the Amish and find respect among these differences from our social
This project greatly deepened my knowledge and understanding of the Amish faith. Prior to researching and the interview, I had some knowledge of the faith and had seen people of the faith before, but now understand that they are just simple people trying to live simple lives in the ever-changing world. I admire their commitments to their community, and while how they choose to live their lives may seem outdated or different from how we do, it's still important to respect them. I have learned a lot about the Amish religious beliefs and more about their culture as
Throughout researching for the project, I had realized I had a misconception about the Amish people. I had always cast them off as weird or different, as I had only seen the Amish through television or social media from others' perspectives. But in reality, it is a community that is often filled with faith and tradition, and that, after researching, holds my respect. They honor what they have been taught and don't let the opinions of the outside world affect their lives. This project has greatly expanded my knowledge on the community, and I am so thankful to have learned about their culture and traditions.